On May 31st, 2026, the Internet watched in absolute shock as KSI officially announced his departure from the Sidemen. Millions of fans flooded the comment sections, mourning what looked like an emotional retreat fueled by creative burnout. But if you look past the public sympathy and analyze the timing on a corporate ledger, a much more calculating reality comes to light. What if this sudden exit wasn't a personal crisis at all, but a high-stakes financial maneuver? While the world was busy dissecting his emotional state, an elite team of corporate advisors was quietly weaponizing the narrative of his departure to do something incredibly cutthroat: artificially inflate the valuation of Prime Hydration. In the multi-billion-dollar arena of creator-led commerce, the most valuable currency on Earth isn't liquid cash. It is a psychological phenomenon known as attention arbitrage. This is the exact strategy where a massive digital native uses a shocking life pivot or artificial scarcity to hijack the entire global media ecosystem, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in free advertising without spending a single cent on traditional marketing. By deliberately stepping away from a seven-way creator collective, KSI did something brilliant for his personal cap table. He freed his brand identity from a divided group ecosystem, concentrating the absolute entirety of his cultural relevance onto his most valuable single corporate asset. Today, we break down the hidden economic playbook behind the world's most profitable exit strategy, exposing how a manufactured public shockwave is being systematically engineered to set the stage for a historic, multi-billion-dollar IPO. To uncover the mechanics of this valuation play, we have to look directly at the hidden corporate blueprint of Prime Hydration LLC. To the public, Prime is universally perceived as Logan Paul and KSI's company. Their names are stamped on every bottle, their faces dominate every ad campaign, and they routinely call themselves the founders. But in the world of venture capital, branding and actual corporate architecture are two completely different beasts. If you pull the official regulatory files from the Kentucky Secretary of State, the true structural foundation of the brand is revealed. The registered corporate owners and officers of Prime Hydration are not the two internet stars. The company is operating as a joint venture under Congo Brands, an elite, low-profile consumer product incubator engineered by beverage executives Max Clemens and Trey Steiger. Under this highly specific corporate arrangement, Congo Brands acts as the majority owner and operational engine, holding a decisive 60% controlling stake in Prime. They control the voting rights, manage the manufacturing plants, optimize the global supply chains, and dictate the institutional retail distribution strategy. The remaining 40% of the company's equity is split evenly, giving Logan Paul and KSI exactly 20% ownership stakes each. Their operational mandate is clear-cut. They don't manage warehouses or balance sheets. They manage the global matrix of attention. While a 20% stake in a multi-billion-dollar beverage asset sounds like absolute financial freedom, it comes with a major structural bottleneck when you are operating inside a seven-way creator collective like the Sidemen. When a private equity firm or an institutional investment bank evaluates a celebrity-backed business for a potential buyout or a public offering, they perform a rigorous audit on the founder's cap table and personal brand equity. Wall Street investors possess an intense aversion to what is known as diluted focus. They do not want to see a 20% equity holder splitting his daily public identity, creative energy, and marketing power across multiple competing commercial ventures. Every hour KSI spent shooting a Sidemen Sunday video, promoting an IIK vodka launch, or launching a group merchandise drop, was viewed by institutional analysts as a direct subtraction from his promotional velocity for Prime. The Sidemen ecosystem was effectively capping his individual brand equity. Because the collective operates as an equal seven-way split, the financial yield of his daily attention inside the group was heavily diluted. Conversely, every single ounce of attention he channels into Prime directly inflates an asset where he retains a massive, concentrated 20% personal equity position. This creates a massive misalignment in asset allocation. Private equity firms analyzing Prime's long-term runway look at the key man structure with immense scrutiny. They want a guarantee that the celebrity marketing engines are completely unfettered and fully aligned with the brand's corporate roadmap. By engineering a sudden, highly publicized departure from the Sidemen on the grounds of career exhaustion, KSI didn't just change his daily schedule. He executed a cutthroat corporate optimization play. He completely consolidated his personal brand identity, taking his massive, singular cultural influence out of a divided group ecosystem and focusing its entire raw power onto a single, high-stakes, commercial balance sheet. This brings us to the exact data point that explains why institutional investors favor this exact type of founder consolidation. On a corporate cap table, a celebrity's time and focus are treated as a depreciating or appreciating operational asset. When an institutional investor sees a primary ambassador strip away all secondary distractions to focus entirely on a core brand, the perceived execution risk of that business drops significantly. The valuation model shifts from treating the creator as a volatile part-time promoter to evaluating them as a dedicated corporate stakeholder. By freeing his personal brand equity from the structural boundaries of the group, KSI effectively handed Congo Brands the exact asset alignment narrative they needed to present to institutional buyers. He transformed himself from a distracted content creator into an unfettered corporate weapon whose entire public identity is now tethered to the growth, expansion, and financial optimization of Prime. But while this individual consolidation solved the internal cap table problem, it was only designed to address one half of the corporate life cycle. Because out in the physical retail market, the explosive hype that built the brand was beginning to collide with the harsh, cold reality of a changing consumer landscape. To fully understand the necessity of this corporate maneuver, you have to look at the violent trajectory of Prime's market life cycle. Between 2022 and 2024, Prime Hydration pulled off what was widely considered the most meteoric product launch in the history of the beverage industry. It was an absolute masterclass in supply and demand manipulation. By intentionally choking the initial retail supply chain, Logan Paul and KSI engineered a state of artificial scarcity that triggered absolute mass hysteria among adolescent consumers. Bottles that cost $2 at retail were being flipped on secondary markets for $20, $50, or even $100. Kids were physically fighting in supermarket aisles, schools were banning the drink like contraband, and major news networks were treating new flavor drops like global political events. But out in the real world of consumer packaged goods, every hyperinflated hype cycle eventually faces an unavoidable law of gravity: market normalization. Hype is an incredibly effective fuel to launch a rocket, but it is too volatile to sustain orbit. By late 2024 and throughout 2025, the initial novelty completely evaporated. The artificial scarcity strategy was no longer viable because Congo Brands had to scale up massive, high-volume production lines to fulfill their global distribution contracts with retail giants like Walmart, Target, and Costco. The moment Prime became ubiquitous, the moment it was easily accessible on every grocery store shelf in the world, the psychological illusion of exclusivity shattered. The secondary flipping market completely crashed. Inventory began sitting in warehouses longer, and the product faced the ultimate test of any consumer brand, building a sustainable, recurring consumer habit based on flavor, utility, and product loyalty rather than internet clout. This drop in natural consumer velocity presented a massive existential problem for Prime's ultimate financial roadmap. Congo brands, Logan Paul and KSI, were never planning to run a standard juice company for the next 30 years. From the very beginning, the structural goal of Prime was to engineer a massive liquidity event. In the playbook of venture capital, you build a high-velocity brand with the explicit intention of either selling the entire operation to a legacy conglomerate like Coca-Cola or PepsiCo, or taking the company public on the stock market via an initial public offering, or IPO. But to pull off a multi-billion-dollar IPO, or secure a massive corporate buyout, the company's financial books need to demonstrate consistent, upward momentum. Institutional investment banks and Wall Street underwriters do not calculate a company's valuation based on how famous its founders were 2 years ago. They look at current brand velocity, future market expansion capacity, and cultural relevance. By early 2026, standard influencer marketing tactics, like posting a generic promotional video or doing a standard social media giveaway, were completely losing their punch. The algorithm was fatigued, the audience was desensitized, and the brand equity needed a dramatic, systemic injection of fresh attention volume. To reignite the hype machine for the next phase of corporate valuation, KSI didn't need a new flavor. He needed a shockwave. He needed to create a massive informational void that would forcefully pull the global news cycle back onto his personal brand identity. In the arena of corporate public relations, this is where the genius of attention arbitrage comes into play. If a company spends $50 million on a traditional global ad campaign, consumers instinctively tune it out because their brains recognize it as a paid corporate message. But if a primary founder creates a massive piece of personal, real-life drama, the internet will organic distribute that message to hundreds of millions of people completely free of charge. The announcement of May 31st was the perfect, highly engineered catalyst. By releasing a video that framed his exit from the Sidemen as a deeply personal, emotional turning point caused by exhaustion and burnout, KSI successfully triggered a global media wildfire. The narrative completely bypassed the standard advertising filters of the modern consumer. Every major media outlet, commentary channel, and entertainment blog covered the story. Millions of individual fans spent weeks debating the future of his career, generating billions of organic impressions across TikTok, X, and YouTube. But while the public was entirely focused on the emotional narrative of his retirement, the underlying corporate PR metrics were quietly achieving their true, hidden objective. The sudden explosion of attention surrounding KSI's personal brand instantly bled back into his primary commercial asset. Search volume for his name skyrocketed, and with it, the cultural visibility of Prime Hydration experienced a massive artificial spike right as the brand was entering critical boardroom negotiations with institutional underwriters. This is the exact point where personal drama translates directly into real-world equity valuation. By utilizing his personal life as a strategic marketing asset, KSI successfully manufactured a massive wave of cultural relevance that corporate analysts could point to during institutional pitch meetings. they could actively prove to Wall Street investors that the brand's primary ambassador still possessed an unprecedented, unparalleled ability to move the global needle of human attention at absolute will. The timing was executed with lethal corporate precision. The public thought they were witnessing a creator hitting a breaking point and stepping away from the spotlight to rest. In reality, they were watching a highly coordinated, multi-million-dollar marketing campaign disguised as a personal crisis. A campaign designed to artificially inflate the brand's cultural momentum at the exact moment necessary to protect its multi-billion-dollar valuation on the global market. The timing of the May 31st announcement was a masterclass in corporate choreography. To the public, it was framed entirely as a personal life pivot, but to the underwriting investment banks preparing Prime for its next institutional phase, it was the ultimate activation signal. If you cross-reference the timing of KSI's retirement video with the real-world operational schedule of Congo brands, the true capital blueprint emerges. Prime was aggressively shifting its product lifecycle, rolling out a high-stakes transition toward its newly minted zero sugar and premium Prime protein lines across global retail giants like Target, Walmart, and Costco. In the rigid world of fast-moving consumer goods, launching entirely new product lines into major supermarket matrices requires a staggering amount of promotional momentum to clear out old inventory and justify the new shelf space. By clearing his personal schedule of the relentless demands of a seven-way creator collective, KSI effectively unlocked hundreds of hours of prime marketing availability. He transformed himself into an unencumbered corporate asset, capable of anchoring massive global promotional campaigns without a single conflicting obligation. This sudden baseline of free calendar space coincided perfectly with a critical series of high-stakes corporate renewals. Prime wasn't just selling bottles to teenagers anymore. They had scaled up into multi-million-dollar sports entertainment sponsorships, locking in massive, exclusive hydration partnerships with the Premier League's Arsenal, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and a historic center-ring canvas branding deal with the WWE. These institutional partnerships require an astronomical amount of hands-on, high-profile execution from the face of the brand. A creator who is locked inside a grueling weekly production cycle for a group channel simply cannot fly across the Atlantic to anchor a massive live activation at a premium stadium event. By stepping away from the sidemen, KSI engineered the exact baseline narrative needed to pitch conservative retail buyers and global distributors during their international market expansions into Europe and North America. The corporate message to the market was definitive. The brand's primary ambassador was no longer treats this as an internet side hustle. He was fully deployed, hyper-focused, and completely integrated into the brand's global retail offensive. This operational optimization sends a powerful signal straight to the institutional underwriters calculating Prime's IPO valuation. When investment banks like Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley structure a public offering, they look directly at what is known as the concentration risk profile of the celebrity founder. If the founder's cultural relevance is tied up in a secondary group asset that they do not entirely own, the risk model becomes incredibly volatile. But by intentionally severing those group ties, the valuation model shifts. The creator's personal drama is successfully converted into real-world equity stabilization, demonstrating to Wall Street that the underlying corporate infrastructure is backed by an ambassador who has pushed all his chips into a single, multi-billion-dollar basket. When the curtain falls on the internet's biggest spectacles, the underlying money trail reveals a completely different story. The dramatic events of May 31st provide an absolute masterclass in how personal narratives are leveraged to stabilize real-world equity valuations. For the casual viewer, watching a creator hit their breaking point and choose family over fame is an empathetic human experience. But for a corporate entity preparing to pitch conservative underwriters on Wall Street, that exact emotional turning point is stripped of its sentiment and calculated purely as a risk mitigation play. In the hyper-advanced landscape of the creator economy, personal life choices are no longer distinct from corporate agendas. They are the primary engine driving them. By pulling his brand identity out of the sidemen, KSI successfully proved to institutional investors that his highest value asset, Prime Hydration, was no longer competing against a group ecosystem for his attention. He altered the perception of his company's risk profile, demonstrating to potential buyers and lenders that he was fully aligned with the brand's global trajectory. This is the ultimate realization of modern digital commerce. Human emotion, life updates, and public vulnerability are the most effective marketing weapons ever engineered. They achieve what traditional multi-million-dollar advertising budgets never could: total, unvetted access to global consumer consciousness. The corporate playbook of Prime has set an entirely new benchmark for how digital natives interface with traditional markets. They used an initial wave of artificial scarcity to break through the gatekeeping of the beverage industry, and then used a massive pivot in personal lifestyle narrative to artificially spike their cultural momentum right when the product faced market normalization. They successfully demonstrated to the financial sector that a creator-led brand isn't a fleeting internet trend, but a hyper-adaptive corporate entity capable of manipulating global media cycles at absolute will to protect its multi-billion-dollar valuation. But as Prime's underwriters finalize their pitch decks for the upcoming public offering, a chilling realization has begun to ripple through the legacy media landscape. This high-stakes strategy of using personal life milestones to maximize corporate leverage was never meant to be a standalone phenomenon. While Congo brands and their legal teams were optimizing the cap table for an impending beverage IPO, a completely parallel, equally aggressive financial maneuver was reaching its boiling point across the Atlantic. KSI wasn't the only digital giant restructuring his career obligations to pave the way for a massive corporate takeover. His biggest rival and longtime partner was quietly executing a strategy that would completely shift the balance of power in global entertainment. Because while Prime was focused on conquering supermarket shelves and stadium canvases, Jake Paul was busy utilizing a trillion-dollar streaming juggernaut to execute a total monopoly over live sports broadcasting. The era of creators operating as mere product promoters is officially over. The era of creators building structural, media-dominating cartels has arrived. If you want to understand how this new elite class of digital executives is systematically bankrupting traditional television networks and shifting the coordinates of global wealth, you cannot afford to miss the next piece of the puzzle. Click on the video appearing on your screen right now to look inside the multi-billion-dollar war between Netflix and legacy media and see exactly how Jake Paul turned most valuable promotions into Silicon Valley's ultimate Trojan horse. Watch it right now and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never lose step with the hidden economic forces rewriting the real